For centuries, we've been taught to view Egypt as the pinnacle of ancient civilization, with its mighty pharaohs and the architectural wonders they left behind. The pyramids, the Sphinx, the temples of Luxor and Karnak, all symbols of the power, wealth, and ingenuity of ancient Egypt. But what if I told you that everything we've learned about Egypt's greatest rulers and monuments is only half the story? What if the true masterminds behind the greatest achievements of ancient Egypt, from the pyramids to the temples, were not Egyptians at all? Today, we're going to dive into the hidden history that connects ancient Egypt's most famous figures, including the builders of the pyramids, to the mighty kingdom of Ethiopia. The secret that historians have been reluctant to explore is that many of Egypt's greatest achievements might have been the work of Ethiopian pharaohs and builders. Stay tuned as we unravel the truth and uncover the forgotten legacy of Ethiopia's influence on Egypt. By the end of this video, you'll never see the pyramids in the same way again. The Ethiopian connection to Egypt's greatest pharaohs. Let's start with one of the most famous figures in ancient history, Pharaoh Khufu, the ruler who supposedly built the Great Pyramid of Giza. Khufu, also known as Cheops, is celebrated for overseeing the construction of one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But what if I told you Khufu was actually of Ethiopian descent? For years, historians have argued that Khufu was an Egyptian king. But there is mounting evidence suggesting that his lineage, along with many other powerful pharaohs, traces back to the Ethiopian highlands. Ethiopia, known for its long history of powerful kings and queens, had a profound influence over the entire Nile Valley, including Egypt. The Ethiopian kings had sophisticated building techniques, monumental stonework, and religious beliefs centered around grand constructions like pyramids. Now, let's consider the fact that Ethiopia wasn't a small, isolated kingdom. It was a hub of trade, culture, and innovation that influenced vast regions of Africa, including Egypt. Ethiopia's rulers, long before Khufu, had already mastered the art of constructing grand stone monuments. Archaeological findings in Ethiopia show that long before Khufu's reign, Ethiopian rulers were already constructing these monuments, including the famous stelae of Aksum. These were tall, intricate stone obelisks built to honor Ethiopian kings and their divine connection to the gods. This architectural tradition likely traveled north with Ethiopian rulers and was used as the foundation for pyramid construction in Egypt. Khufu, then, could be seen not as an Egyptian innovator, but as a descendant of Ethiopian kings who carried their knowledge of monumental stonework into Egypt. Could it be that the techniques and knowledge used to build the Great Pyramid of Giza actually came from Ethiopia? It's a theory that more scholars are starting to consider. In fact, Ethiopia's influence didn't stop at architecture. The Ethiopian kings also brought with them religious ideas, astronomical knowledge, and advanced mathematical principles, all of which were crucial in the construction of the pyramids. For example, the alignment of the pyramids with the stars, especially with Orion's belt, was a significant aspect of their construction. This type of celestial alignment wasn't unique to Egypt. Ethiopian astronomers and priests were already using the stars to guide their religious practices and architectural designs long before Egypt rose to power. This celestial knowledge is key to understanding the true origins of Egypt's most famous monuments. Ethiopian builders knew that aligning structures with the heavens symbolized the connection between their kings and the gods, a concept that was carried over into Egypt and used in the construction of the pyramids. It wasn't just about building a tomb. It was about building a gateway to the afterlife, a concept deeply rooted in Ethiopian spirituality. Khufu, the Ethiopian mastermind behind the Great Pyramid. Pharaoh Khufu, or should I say, Ethiopian King Khufu, was not only a ruler, he was a visionary leader from Ethiopia, determined to leave his mark on the world. Scholars now believe that Khufu's expertise in engineering and construction wasn't homegrown in Egypt, but brought from his ancestors in Ethiopia. It's no coincidence that the ancient kingdom of Aksum, which flourished in Ethiopia, also boasted massive stone constructions. The techniques used to build the stele of Aksum bear remarkable similarities to those employed in the construction of the pyramids. Let's talk specifics. Khufu's Great Pyramid aligns almost perfectly with the cardinal points of the compass. This advanced knowledge of geometry and astronomy wasn't unique to Egypt. Ethiopian astronomers were known to study the stars to guide everything from religious ceremonies to monumental architecture. It's highly likely that the Ethiopians brought this knowledge with them to Egypt, shaping how the pyramids were built. So, Khufu wasn't just an Egyptian pharaoh, but the crowning glory of Ethiopian architectural and engineering genius. Khufu's reign wasn't just about building the Great Pyramid. His impact on Egypt extended far beyond architecture. Under his rule, Egypt became a beacon of culture and religious influence. But again, much of this cultural flourishing can be traced back to Ethiopia. Khufu's connections to the Ethiopian highlands meant that Ethiopia's religious traditions, art, and customs were incorporated into Egyptian society during his reign. The religious beliefs that centered around the pyramids, such as the journey of the soul to the afterlife, mirrored Ethiopian beliefs about death, the afterlife, and the eternal soul. Was Sneferu Ethiopian too, the builder of bent and red pyramids? But Khufu wasn't the only pharaoh with ties to Ethiopia. Let's talk about Sneferu, Khufu's father and one of Egypt's greatest builders. Sneferu is credited with constructing the first true pyramids, including the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid. These iconic structures marked the transition from step pyramids to smooth-sided ones, like Khufu's Great Pyramid. However, what many people don't know is that Sneferu himself may have had deep Ethiopian roots. Sneferu's architectural projects were groundbreaking, but the techniques he employed, particularly the precision in stone cutting and the massive scale of construction, bear striking similarities to Ethiopian practices. Ethiopian builders were skilled in carving massive stones and aligning structures with astronomical phenomena long before Sneferu took the throne. Could it be that Sneferu's construction prowess was inherited from his Ethiopian ancestors? Historians are now beginning to re-examine the evidence, suggesting that Sneferu might have been following Ethiopian traditions of monumental building rather than creating something entirely new. The Bent Pyramid, with its unusual shape, has long baffled archaeologists. But if you look at Ethiopia's own pyramidal structures and stelae, you'll see a similar experimentation with form and structure. The Ethiopians had a history of building complex, multi-stage monuments, and it's entirely possible that Sneferu was simply applying Ethiopian building principles to his pyramids in Egypt. Not only was Sneferu a master builder, but his connections to Ethiopia might also explain his bold approach to constructing such grand and complex structures. The influence of Ethiopian craftsmanship and religious symbolism could be seen in the way Sneferu approached the construction of pyramids, making them not just burial sites, but spiritual monuments to honor the gods and guide the soul into the afterlife. The Ethiopian pharaohs who shaped Egypt's new kingdom. Fast forward to Egypt's new kingdom, a period marked by military expansion, great wealth, and even more impressive architecture. Here, we meet some of the most famous pharaohs in history, like Hatshepsut, Thutmose III, and Amenhotep III. But were they truly Egyptian, or were they part of a longer Ethiopian legacy? Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's most powerful female rulers, has often been portrayed as a purely Egyptian queen, but her reign was marked by trade expeditions to the mysterious land of Punt, which many historians believe was located in modern-day Ethiopia. Punt was not just a trade partner, but a cultural and religious influence on Egypt. Hatshepsut herself may have been of Ethiopian descent, continuing the long-standing tradition of Ethiopian rulers taking the Egyptian throne. Her construction of the magnificent temple at Deir el-Bahri was likely inspired by Ethiopian religious and architectural traditions, further blurring the lines between the two civilizations. The influence of Punt, or Ethiopia, during Hatshepsut's reign cannot be understated. Many of the goods brought back from Punt were religious in nature, and the iconography of these items found their way into Egyptian temples and tombs. The cultural exchange between Ethiopia and Egypt was evident in the art, religious rituals, and architecture that flourished under Hatshepsut's rule. Thutmose III, often hailed as Egypt's greatest military ruler, led extensive campaigns into Nubia and Ethiopia. It's believed that he too had Ethiopian ancestry, and that his military conquests were as much about reuniting the Ethiopian empire as they were about expanding Egypt's borders. Under Thutmose's reign, Egypt and Ethiopia were not rivals but allies, connected by blood and tradition. Thutmose's great building projects, including temples at Karnak and Luxor, could very well have been inspired by Ethiopian religious practices, which revolved around grand stone structures designed to honor the gods. Ramses the Great, the Ethiopian emperor behind Egypt's grand temples. Now let's talk about the King of Kings, Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great. Ramses is often remembered for his military exploits and his grand building projects, including the temples at Abu Simbel. But was Ramses truly Egyptian, or was he following in the footsteps of his Ethiopian ancestors? There's growing evidence to suggest that Ramses II had Ethiopian heritage. His reign was marked by a revival of monumental architecture, much of which was inspired by Ethiopian traditions. The massive statues and temples he built were reminiscent of the grand stelae and temples found in Ethiopia's Aksumite kingdom. Ramses' insistence on creating larger-than-life monuments to himself and the gods is something that has strong parallels in Ethiopian history, where kings would erect towering monuments to demonstrate their divine power. The sheer scale of Ramses' building projects, including the massive temples of Abu Simbel, is strikingly similar to the monumental structures found in Ethiopia. His desire to create temples that honored both the gods and his own legacy was a concept deeply rooted in Ethiopian culture, where kings were often depicted as living gods who would ascend to the heavens after death. King Tutankhamun, the Ethiopian boy king? We can't talk about Egypt without mentioning the boy king himself, Tutankhamun. His tomb, discovered in the Valley of the Kings, is one of the most famous archaeological finds in history. But who was King Tut really? While much of his life remains a mystery, some scholars now believe that Tutankhamun may have been of Ethiopian descent. Tutankhamun's mother, thought to be Queen Kia, has been linked to Nubian and Ethiopian royal lines. This would mean that King Tut wasn't just an Egyptian pharaoh, but an Ethiopian prince as well. The treasures found in his tomb, including intricate gold jewelry and furniture, have strong stylistic ties to Ethiopian craftsmanship, suggesting that the young king may have been deeply connected to the Ethiopian traditions of his ancestors. Ethiopian builders, the true architects behind Egypt's wonders. So, what does all of this mean? It means that the history of Egypt is far more intertwined with Ethiopia than we've been taught. The pyramids, temples, and monuments that we associate with Egypt's greatest pharaohs may have been the result of Ethiopian architectural knowledge and religious practices. The great pharaohs, from Khufu to Ramses II, may have been Ethiopian kings, ruling over Egypt as part of a larger Ethiopian empire. Ethiopian builders, with their deep understanding of stonework, astronomy, and geometry, likely played a key role in the construction of Egypt's greatest monuments. From the Great Pyramid of Giza to the temples of Karnak and Abu Simbel, Ethiopia's influence can be seen in every corner of Egypt's architectural achievements. And as we uncover more about the connections between these two great civilizations, it becomes clear that the story of ancient Egypt cannot be told without including Ethiopia's contributions. The forgotten legacy of Ethiopia in Egypt. It's time to rewrite history. The pharaohs we've celebrated for centuries as Egyptian rulers were likely Ethiopian kings, continuing a legacy of monumental building and divine kingship that began in the Ethiopian highlands. Khufu, Sneferu, Ramses II, Hatshepsut, and Tutankhamun. These were not just Egyptian rulers. They were part of a larger Ethiopian dynasty that shaped the history of Egypt and the entire Nile Valley. As more evidence comes to light, we're beginning to see that the pyramids, temples, and monuments of Egypt were not just the work of Egyptian ingenuity, but the result of a centuries-long exchange of knowledge and culture between Egypt and Ethiopia. The Ethiopian pharaohs, with their advanced architectural techniques and deep spiritual connection to the gods, were the true masterminds behind some of the greatest achievements in human history. What do you think? Could Ethiopia be the true birthplace of Egypt's architectural wonders? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another episode of Hidden History.